In our series, it is called the Nobel Prize in Literature. And in this seminar, we are basically just talking about each of the winners, the Nobel Prize in Literature winners, and kind of giving a brief overview of how they won the Nobel Prize and a few of their works. And my name is Anna Huang. I am a rising sophomore at OSHA in the Creative Writing Conservatory. Okay, we can go to the first slide. All right, so who was Alfred Nobel? Well, he was the guy who had created or founded the Nobel Prize. He was born in Stockholm, Sweden, of October 21st in 1833. In life, he was a Swedish chemist, an engineer, inventor, businessman, and philanthropist. In addition to those, he was also a poet and wrote many dramas. He was such a dedicated man, he received 335 patents. And one of his most well-known, and you guys might know it as well, was his invention of dynamite. Then later in November 27 of 1895, Alfred had signed his last will and testament. And in that will, he had put that he wanted to create a Nobel Prize. And in his will, he donated $265 million in dedication to these 5 Nobel Prizes that he created, which were also the first 5. And additionally, in life, he was awarded with the Legion of Honor. It was a Swedish award, and it was awarded to people who had shown great services in military or civil causes. Then over here on the right is a picture of Alfred Nobel, and on top is a short clip or snippet of his will. And here is just the Sweden flag where he was born. Next. Okay, so what is the Nobel Prize? Well, the Nobel Prize now consists of 6 different categories. They are physics, chemistry, psychology or medicine, peace, literature, and economics. And the ones highlighted in blue or green are the ones that were first made by Alfred, but later the one called economics was later added to these 5. But the one highlighted in green, which is literature, is the one we will today be mostly talking about and getting further into. So winners are usually announced early October, but the award ceremonies are held in December 10th, where the winners receive their prizes. And over the years, there have been a total of 605 Nobel Prizes awarded in all of the categories combined. And in some years, mostly because of World War I and World War II, the award ceremonies were canceled. Then if you go up here, there is a quote. This quote is mostly to symbolize those who are able to win the Nobel Prize. And it says, "To those who during the preceding year have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind." And this quote basically encapsulates the idea of what type of person should be receiving either of these 6 categories of the Nobel Prize. Then over here is a pie chart. It is quite small. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but it is a data of where all these Nobel Prize winners live. And most of them are from the US. Okay, next. Nobel Prize in Literature. So the first prize in literature was awarded in 1901, and most of these prizes are focused on an author's entire work rather than just a single piece, although they may have a single piece that is more well known to the rest, but usually the award is not given to the piece of work, but rather the author, so that their entire work can be showcased to the world. Then this year, the winner will be announced in early October, and that is October 7th. And at the top over here is the quote. It says, "In the field of literature, produce the most outstanding work in an idealistic direction." And this is a generalization of what a Nobel Prize in Literature winner might represent in their works of art. And this bar graph shows a summary of where all of the Nobel Prize literatures and their languages. And it shows that English has 30. Okay. Oh, you can go to the next one. And then the nomination process. So judges come from the Swedish Academy, and these are the people who will be judging each of the nominated candidates and their works, and they will be the people who will finally decide and make the final decision of each winner. Any person is able to make a nomination and nominate a candidate, but they cannot nominate oneself. And if they see someone fit to the description I had previously said, then they can nominate them. And for a candidate to win, they must be on the nomination list at the end and be entered in the pool at least twice to be seen as a winner. And again, they are usually announced in early October, and the award will be announced or will be held December 10th. Finally, it takes about 50 years for each nomination process to be revealed. That is, each nominated person will be revealed after 50 years, as well as the process of how each person was eliminated. And over here is a video, but sadly due to copyright, we will not be playing it. But basically, it's a more in-depth version of how the nomination process goes. Okay, next. Prizes. So each winner will receive a gold medal, and over here is in the middle is what the gold medal looks like, with a picture of Alfred Nobel on it. In addition to the gold medal, they are also given a diploma. Here on the very right is Bob Dylan's diploma. And actually, at first, he had not went to receive his diploma, or his award. But later, after the ceremony was held, he decided he would actually receive his award, so he went. And each diploma is different based on what the person stood out for that year. And the diploma is given to the winner directly from the King of Sweden. And in addition to this gold medal and the diploma, the winner is also given an abundance of money, and that depends on how much money is raised by the Nobel Foundation that year. But if there are two winners that year, then the money will be split between them. And in some cases, too, winners didn't collect their prizes, and those are, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Boris Pasternak and Jean-Paul Sartre. So Boris Pasternak, he had originally went and collected his prize, but then the Soviet Union had declined, so in the end, he wasn't able to receive this prize. Then for Jean-Paul, he felt as if he didn't want to be recognized for receiving this prize and didn't want the award, so he didn't end up receiving the award. And next. All right, criticism. As good as the Nobel Prize may seem, there are still criticism that a few people will give it, such as the Nobel guidelines. Each person will interpret a great author differently, and so these guidelines are always seen controversial to some. And most of the prize winners are mostly men, and that is European men. And if you had remember in the previous slides, they had in the bar graphs and the pie chart, you could see that most of the people tended to be men or European or like from English. And then there are overlooked achievements. For overlooked achievements, some winners, they probably were seen as a more or better winner than others, but because some people overlooked their achievements, they weren't actually chosen for that winner that year. And then there's the 2018 controversy, which I will not go into very much, but if you would like to know about it, you can feel free to search it up. But it did result in its cancellation, but then after a year, the ceremony was held. And finally, many laureates, after winning the prize, they become obscure. And after becoming obscure, not many people know about them, and that is one of the main reasons today and why we are holding this seminar, so that we can teach you about these winners and so that you guys can learn more about them. And yeah. Finally, we have laureates. You must have already heard this term quite a few times. So this is the official term of a Nobel Prize winner, and prizes are usually given to the laureate rather than their achievements. So instead of a book or any piece of work they are making, instead of giving it to that particular work, they are given to the laureates so that you can see their works of art in a whole. And for each winner, there is always a listed reason of why they should be receiving this prize, whether that be they are seen as a very poetic person or very imaginative. There is also always a very unique reason of why a laureate should be the winner of that year. And throughout all of these years since 1901, when the first Nobel Prize in Literature was given, there has been a total of 101 men to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature and only 16 women. And as a total, that would be 117 people to receive it, but only 113 awards have been given. And next. And finally, that is the concluding slide. And thank you all for listening to the Nobel Prize in Literature and the background of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anna. I'm Jerry. I'm also a student at OSHA, although I'm a rising junior this year. So after her great introduction to the Nobel Prize in Literature, I'll be talking a bit about the first winner of Nobel Prize in Literature, Sully Prudhomme. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1901, signaling the start to a century-long Nobel Prize in Literature era. He was a French poet, born in 1839 and died in 1907, only 6 years after receiving his award. His parents were both shoemakers, and then when he was young, he was educated by his parents about skills in handicraft. And then when he started going to school, he originally wanted to study engineering. But of course, we all know that one's interest can change. He then switched to philosophy, but then that didn't stick long as well. He then transferred to poetry. But before he could graduate, he received an eye issue that quite interrupted his schoolwork a bit because all of his work depended a lot on his vision. Even though he still had his shoemaking or other engineering skills, but Sully Prudhomme decided that he wasn't going he wasn't going into the design or engineering or shoemaking field. He wanted to become something else, someone who can contribute in the humanities. He firstly he encountered poetry by writing a poem during his free time and presenting it to a student union called Conference Laureates. I think I mispronounced it. I think I mispronounced it. But anyways, it was, like I said, a student union, nothing formal, very casual, a very casual organization. Not something like this. Is not that formal. Um, so other students in that union believed that he was a very good poet, and they encouraged him to continue his pursuit of poetry. That's how he decided that he was a poetry guy. He was a poet. Um, after getting that initial encouragement, he went on to write multiple poetry collections. Uh, his first one was titled "Stanzas of Poems." That is the name of his collection, and it was published in 1865. It was received pretty well in France. Uh, Multiple famous writers and poets and critiques at the time wrote uh, quite quite splendid and encouraging comments to his work. The picture here is a modern cover to his first collection, stanzas and poems. Um, he did not only write poetry; he wrote many essays too. Some of them were personal essays about his past, and he also did some critiques. So he wrote essays critiquing on the current uh, French society and the environment. But he was mostly known for his poetry. Um, but one thing that differentiates him from other famous writers that we know is that he was famous. He got famous before he could die. Of course, that's how he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Unlike poets like Edgar Allan Poe or writers like Franz Kafka, he received his fame quite early in his life, quite early in his poetry career, or just writing career in general. So after publishing his first collection of stanzas of poems, his fame just shot straight up. That this is a pretty simplified present graph of how his fame went as a poet. He wasn't very well known as an engineer or as a shoemaker, mostly because he abandoned it when he was young, and he didn't want to pick them back up after he became famous. But just like how he got his eye issue, he also got pretty bad health during the Franco-Prussian War. Um, that caused him to live separately from from the big cities of France, and he had to live secluded in a forest, not really forest, just like a shack, a small house outside of the big city, so he could get enough rest. Also during that time, he continued to write poems, polish his work. Um, the his prize motivation, so that could be viewed as the reasoning that the Swedish Academy provided to why they chose this person as the laureate of Nobel Prize in Literature. And as you'll see in our future seminars, we'll be seeing the prize motivation for each of um, though of course the Nobel Prize in Literature winners. So for Sully Prudhomme, his prize motivation was in special recognition of his poetic composition, which gives evidence of lofty idealism, artistic perfection, and a rare combination of the qualities of both heart and intellect. What does what does that mean? It sounds pretty complicated. So first, the Swedish Academy chose him for his poetry skills, for his or they called it as poetic composition. So that means he wasn't as successful with his essays than his poems. Um, then we know that his poems have three important aspects. First is great expectations, second, great writing skills, and third, usage of both emotions and objective thoughts. Those could be seen here with the first point presented as which gives evidence of lofty idealism. The second point is artistic perfection, and the third being a rare combination of qualities of both heart and intellect. Most of his poems are known probably for the third quality, a combination of the qualities of both heart and intellect. Because of Sully's engineering background, most of his poems are related one way or another to engineering. And he himself said that he wanted to create scientific poetry that could be seen as a something like science fiction, but instead he took the aspect of science fiction into writing poetry. But as Anna has said, most Nobel Prize in Literature winners did not become as successful after receiving a prize as they were before the prize, compared to other Nobel Prize winners, such as Ernest Hemingway. Sully Prudhomme isn't as well known as many other writers, even compared to writers who have not won the prize. The one reason is that he was the first Nobel Prize in Literature winner, and at that time the prize wasn't wasn't received as well or seen as reputable as the prize is seen today. So hopefully you enjoyed the brief introduction to Sully Prudhomme, and I'll give the stage to Lacole.
All right, thank you, Jerry. I'm Lacole Yang. I'm a student at OSHA, and I'm a rising sophomore. Today I'm going to be talking about Theodore Monson, who is the second Nobel Literature Prize winner. Right, so I'm going to go over who is Theodore Monson, and then I'm going to show a little timeline of his life, and I'm going to go over a few facts about his important work during his lifetime, which is called History of Rome. And I'm also going to be describing his writing style a little bit. Okay, so who is Theodore Mommsen exactly? He was born as Christian Matthias Theodore Mommsen, and as I've already said, he was the Nobel Prize winner in literature for the year 1902, and he was a classical historian. Classical refers to the classical era, which was back when the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans were still flourishing. Mommsen wrote a lot of things during his lifetime, and he had over 1,500 published works in total. Some of the long-lasting contributions he made to his field was establishing a new framework, a new way for systematically studying Roman history. An interesting fact about him is that he's one of the only nonfiction authors to win the Nobel Prize, since a lot of Nobel Literature laureates were fiction writers. And he's also the second oldest Nobel Literature laureate. He held the title of oldest Nobel Literature Prize winner until the year 2007. You can go to the next one. Some words that the Nobel Foundation has used to describe him are the greatest living master of the art of historical writing, and they also emphasize how vivid and empathetic his writing was, and that is the reason he won the Nobel Prize. Moving on. Okay, so this is a little timeline of his life. Mommsen was born on November 30th, 1817 in Garding, Schleswig. Schleswig is currently part of Germany, and Mommsen always saw himself as a German citizen, but before Schleswig became part of German territory, Denmark also wanted to annex it or have it be ruled and governed by Denmark. But Mommsen always supported German rule of that area. In the 1830s, Mommsen attended Gymnasium Christianum in Altona for 4 years of his life for his education. Gymnasium Christianum is a preparatory school, and it's also a grammar school, so it's basically like the equivalent of teaching high school age students in the US, and it also prepared students for college. In 1838 to 1843, Mommsen studied jurisprudence at the Christian Albrecht University of Kiel, and he graduated with the degree Doctor of Roman Law. Jurisprudence is the study of the theory of law, and in Germany, jurisprudence focused on the theory of Roman law in particular. In 1844 to 1847, Mommsen visited France and Italy after completing his studies in college, and while he was in Italy, he got to see a lot of the remains of Roman civilization and Roman architecture, so I'm sure that must have inspired him for his writing. And he studied preserved classical Roman inscriptions there and also conducted research in the Archaeological Institute in Rome. Next. In 1848, Mommsen got his first job teaching at a college, and he got a professorship in law at the University of Leipzig, and he became involved in that year in the revolutions of 1848, which were focusing on removing the monarchical systems of government in Europe. And while he was participating in the revolutions, he worked as the editor of the Schleswig-Holsteinische Zeitung, which is a newspaper. And this newspaper was sharing news about the events in that area related to the revolution. And in 1850, unfortunately, Mommsen lost his professorship at the University of Leipzig due to his political involvement in the revolution, but he didn't stay without a teaching position for long, because in 1852, he got another professorship offer teaching jurisprudence at the University of Zurich. And in 1853, Mommsen began working on one of his more prominent works. It was called The Collection of Latin Inscriptions. In 1854, Mommsen became professor of law at the University of Breslau, and also in 1854, but also in 1855 as well, Mommsen was focusing on publishing his main work, History of Rome, and History of Rome was what the Nobel Foundation drew attention to when they were awarding him with his award. In 1858, Mommsen became the professor of Roman history at the University of Berlin, and he also became the permanent secretary of the Prussian Academy of Arts and Sciences. And while Mommsen was working at the Prussian Academy, he got to work more on publishing the collection of Latin inscriptions, which I mentioned earlier. In the 1870s, Mommsen participated more in politics. He became a prominent or important member of the Prussian House of Representatives, which is like the government system. And when he joined the House of Representatives, he was in the National Liberal Party, but he later switched to the Liberal Party. Next. In 1871 to 1888, Mommsen wrote and published Roman Constitutional Law. In this work, Roman Constitutional Law, Mommsen laid down the system of Roman law. Nobody had really done that before, not even the ancient Romans. So this work was pretty important for him, and it helped people that came after him study Roman law. And in 1899, Mommsen's last work was published, and it was called Roman Criminal Law. And on November 1st in 1903, 1 year after he won the Nobel Prize, Mommsen passed away. Next. Okay, so now I'm gonna talk a little bit about History of Rome, which was his main work. It was about the Roman Republic's history, and he went into a lot of detail about it. Mommsen included the Republic's political history, its legal history, and its economic, cultural, geographical, even meteorological history. Mommsen originally got inspired to write this series of books after he held a public lecture at the University of Leipzig. And History of Rome was a very unique book because in it he questioned these untested traditions that the Romans had, and he rejected idealization of Roman culture, or he didn't accept the idea that Roman culture was perfectly just the ideal, the best thing to try to reach, because Rome also had a lot of questionable traditions and lifestyles. Like, for example, one thing that Mommsen critiqued was the squiarchy, the squiarchy is basically like landowners. It's a class that had a lot of political, social influence. And History of Rome has 5 volumes in total. Mommsen wrote the first 3 volumes in a row. The 4th volume of History of Rome is actually not written by Mommsen, because Mommsen gave up halfway through writing the 4th volume. Sources say that he didn't feel like his writing style could meet the writing style he had for the first 3 volumes. So the 4th volume was constructed from lecture notes that his students took. And Mommsen continued after that and wrote the 5th volume and published it. Next. Okay, so now I'm going to describe Mommsen's writing style a little bit. He was a philosophic historian, meaning that he focused on like human nature and how human minds affected the way like people affected people's actions, and how human nature affected the way history played out. So for him, history was focused on characters and people, as well as the actual events that happened. Mommsen was also known as an excellent historical portraitist, meaning that he really displayed the personalities and character of important historical figures. Mommsen's writing style was also very descriptive and detailed, and that made it a lot more interesting for his readers. His writing also had a lot of emotion. It was emotionally moving, and as I said before, it involved a lot of people. Mommsen put a lot of emotions into his work because he viewed Rome's political parties as similar to the political parties that were in Germany at that time. So he felt like he could really relate to the events that were happening at that time in Rome. Next. Okay, so one of the people that Mommsen really focused on and really tried to describe the character of was Julius Caesar, a dictator of the of Rome. And Mommsen deeply admired Caesar, and as you can see in this quote, Mommsen is talking about how Caesar was unique and he stood apart from everyone else, and he was passionate, or at least that was how Mommsen viewed Caesar as his idol. And that is a little overview of Mommsen's life and his writing. That's all I've got for today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our first series of seminar in the series Nobel Prize in Literature Laureates. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and hopefully you'll come and watch the next seminar in our series, which will be released shortly. Thank you.